Welcome to the Kindle Chronicles, the Friday podcast about your Kindle books and all things Amazon. I'm Len Edgerly. This is the show for September 21st, 2018. I'm going to do kind of a bare bones show today. I'm at my home in Cambridge, Mass, and we're dealing with the aftermath of an accident my mother had up at Ocean Park. She was on her scooty and fell. It fell on top of her, and she fractured her right hip. This was Tuesday night, and this was all coming at the time that they were moving from their home in Cambridge to a new independent living community outside Boston. So all of a sudden, into the midst of that trauma or crisis, whatever you want to call it, a big event for the family, all of a sudden we were in the hospital in Biddeford, Maine, and then by ambulance to Mass General in Boston. Good news is she had the operation yesterday at Mass General, and the doctor called me yesterday afternoon, Dr. Harris, and said the operation was a complete success. The fracture is being contained with pins and a plate so that she'll have as much use of that leg as before. So a huge relief. The idea of an 89-year-old woman going through surgery was something just outside of my realm of understanding. But when you get into the hands of professionals like the team at Mass General and her doctor, Dr. Timothy Ferris, and the whole crew, amazing things are possible. Dad is out at the new place. I'm going to be going out to get him, bring him into the hospital again today, and we're doing shifts of family members, making sure Mom always has somebody with her, and that's what this week has been like. I did have a chance to record an interview at the that was at the Biddeford Hospital Human Resources Department. Gave me a cubicle that I was able to set up a Skype call with Scott Pratt, a wonderful KDP author who writes a mystery series, and so that I've got that in the can. And also this week, Jeff Bezos did a remarkable interview, which I just had a chance to start listening to this morning, with a guy from Bloomberg, and this was in D.C. at the Economic Club, I think. It's just great. It's seeing Bezos talk about being the richest man in the world and his philanthropy initiative. There's about 45 minutes of it, and the first 5 minutes of it, I took out the earbuds and said, Darlene, you got to hear this. This is amazing. My plan then is, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to actually record at the hospital today, but I will have a chance to go to the visitor's room and with my laptop and put together a show for you that has the interview and then as much of the Bezos interview as will fill the usual 45, 58. And I don't think I'm going to put in music. I'm just going to give it to you kind of in raw form. I probably won't have time to edit the interview with Scott, although I'll do some of that. Unfortunately, the audio was not that great. I guess maybe the internet at the Biddeford Hospital was a little dicey. So kind of a bare bones podcast today dedicated to my mother, Lois Edgerly. Appreciate any prayers you could offer for her speedy and full recovery and transitioning into her new life. And it's a time of the family feeling strong and life feeling fragile and precious. And gratitude for technology, I'll have to say, is part of a theme of this show, that when the doctors were telling me how anesthesia has changed in the past 50 years since I was having knee operations at nearby Children's Hospital, it's just a relentless pace of improvement that makes miracles happen, like putting together the fractured hip of an 89-year-old woman and having it all just turn out fine. So feeling very full, very tired, and hope you have a happy first day of autumn. And I'll hopefully have this show up at the usual time sometime later today. Thanks for listening. Here is my human-made bumper music. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do. I've been working with a publicist at Kindle Direct Publishing at Amazon to highlight authors that she thinks I might be interested in, that you might be interested in. And this is the second author that has come to us this way. It's Scott Pratt, and he lives in Tennessee, near Knoxville, I believe. And I reached him the other day to talk about his series. He has 2 series you'll hear about, and also the amazing story of his transition from being a lawyer to being a writer of crime mystery novels. I began by asking him, you know what? I can't remember what I began by asking him with, but we're just going to start playing the interview, and you'll learn all about this wonderful writer by listening to it. Enjoy. Do-do-do-do,
Hey, Scott.
Hey, man, how are you?
Good. Can you see and hear me?
I can.
Good. Likewise.
Good. Miracle.
How about that?
We had some more pleasantries, greetings, and we were going to try to set up a backup that his son Dylan was going to make, but that got a little complicated. And as this part of the pre-interview was going on, I made the mistake in my confusion at the hospital of turning off the record button, thinking, well, I'll just start the record button when we start talking. And I looked down 6 minutes into our conversation and realized I hadn't recorded it. So this part of the interview picks up after about 6 minutes of conversation. And I think he was talking about, I just can't remember what we were talking about, but it falls right in the middle of a story. And I apologize for not being able to replicate what we were talking about in the missing 6 minutes.
I mean, you, of course, this guy was a good friend of mine. I said, you read all the letters, you prove everything, all of that. Will you let me do that? And he said, yeah, sure. So I start threatening to sue Penguin because they didn't promote the books. And the law says that you have to give, if you're going to publish a product, you have an obligation to give that product a reasonable chance of success given the marketplace. Well, I'm in the legal thriller marketplace, which is huge. So I started asking them for my marketing budgets, and they don't have any. So the law's on my side. And eventually, after a year, I pestered them so much, they finally just gave me the rights back to the first 3 books. In the meantime, I'd written a couple of more. I'd done a lot of studying. I read Joe Conrad's blog about self-publishing, and I put this business plan together and started looking at KDP real hard and decided to go ahead and do that. And I published An Innocent Client in November of 2012, and I sold 7 copies the first day at 99 cents. And I thought, well, I don't think I'm going to get rich at this, but, let's keep going. And then 2 weeks later, I released In Good Faith. And then 2 weeks after that, I released Injustice for All. 2 weeks later, I released Reasonable Fear. And within 2 months, I had 5 books up. And I was selling about 200 books a day, still at 99 cents. And then in January, I went to the $2.99 price point because your profit margin goes from 30% to 70%. And I thought, well, I won't sell any books at this price. And I go to bed on New Year's Eve, and I get up the next morning, we're at the $2.99 price point, and I'd made a bunch of money while I was sleeping. And I'm like, this is fantastic. So we just kept going, and then Dylan was in college at the time.
This is your son?
Yes, He was a son. He was majoring in marketing. He was a tremendous baseball player, and I was afraid I was going to lose him to baseball. But he wound up, and I hate this, but he got hurt and he didn't get drafted. So he starts selling cell phones for Verizon, and within 6 months of me starting on KDP, I made $60,000 in 1 month.
Wow.
So I go to Dylan and I say, you want a job, man? Come help me do this because there's a lot to it. And I need to be writing books. So Dylan comes along, he comes and he starts studying. And Dylan is the kind, number one, he's extremely bright. And number two, he just really pours himself into something when he does it. And I think Dylan knows as much about Amazon as anybody that works at Amazon. and about their sales algorithm, about the whole, and especially about selling books. He just learned how to do it, and we got everything, branded. We're real conscious about our brand. We try to put out real high quality stuff. The reviews, the lowest reviewed book that I have in the Dillard series is the first one, An Innocent Client, and it's 4.5.
Wow.
And the highest one is 4.8. That's the last one we put out. And so the fans the readers just really like the stories. And I really enjoyed telling them, So once I got into a situation where the money was coming in and I didn't have to worry about that, and I could go back to writing, and Dylan was handling all the other stuff, he just started concentrating on how can we make this bigger? How can we make this bigger? And KDP has helped us do that. They make it very easy. We got a couple of book bubs, and then he started talking to A.G. Riddle and some of the people that were having same kind of success that we were as indie guys. And he learned about targeted advertising, and we started spending money on advertising, and it's just kind of snowballed and gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're grossing a lot of money now.
You're grossing how much?
I don't know. My best month has been $340,000.
My goodness.
So,
well, you two sound like a well-matched pair in terms of the parts of the work that you're doing.
We've always been really, really close. We just and it's I'm just more of the creative type, and he is more detail oriented, and he's very he's scientific and analytical and all of those things that you need in a person who is marketing your books.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Joe Dillard. What sort of a character is he? I've read. I was going to finish the book, but when my mom got hospitalized, I'm about halfway through, and I'm pretty impressed with this guy. He's a very appealing lawyer protagonist. But when you think of him and his essential qualities, what are they, and perhaps how have they evolved over the 9 books so far?
I think conflicted is the first thing. When you talk about Joe Dillard, he wants to be a good person. That's what he mainly wants to be. But in the world of criminal defense, it's not always easy to be, it's not always easy to be a good person. You're dealing with bad people all the time. Your own clients lie to you all the time. Police officers that you deal with a lot of times get into cases and they just want to win. It gets to a point where once they make an arrest, it turns into a game where who wins and who loses. So that concerned him. The truth gets away, but he's willing to sometimes skirt the rules a little bit, if he has to. He's very devoted to his family. Really devoted to his wife. I didn't want him to be an anti-hero. I didn't want him to be a drunk. I want him to be a good person operating in a very bad world. And I thought it would offer a lot of opportunities to examine all of these different themes that I've been able to examine over the years. And, people look at criminal defense lawyers and they think scumbag. First thing they think bad person. And I can't see you anymore, by the way.
Yeah, the audio's getting a little scratchy. Can you kill the video icon on your side and we'll just stick with voice? I think we'll have a little better quality. Yeah,
I'm not seeing.
That's okay. Let's just keep going.
Oh,
Do you remember what you were saying last?
Well, it just gave me an opportunity to examine all of these themes, and one of the things that I wanted to keep central in the series was the relationship between this man and his family. And he ages naturally. Everybody ages throughout the series. But I remember, when I was doing it, my kids never looked at me and said, "Dad, why do you defend all these terrible people? Why do you do this?" And if it did come up, they knew what I was about. And my thing was about, the Constitution, and everybody has a right to a defense. And I enjoyed the battles. I enjoyed holding the government to their own rules, to their own standards, and making sure that, if they're going to put somebody in a cage, they follow their own rules. And that's what Dillard at his core is all about. And of course, you get into all these kind of wild scenarios along the way, but truth really is stranger than fiction. And I handle cases that are stranger than the ones that I write about.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. It's a really fascinating world, and that's why Law and Order and NYPD Blue and all these great television shows that have been on for so long. That's why they've been on for so long, and why they're still on, why they keep making crime stuff, because it's fascinating to examine the motivations behind the behavior. People that do terrible things, and then the people that try to defend them, and the people that try to prosecute them and judge them, and all of that. Just all of it is fascinating, and I've always found it fascinating. And as long as I keep finding it fascinating, I think I can keep writing about it.
I don't know if it's Joe in the book, someone in the first book says anybody is capable of murder under the right circumstances. Is that kind of your feeling?
Yes. Yeah, it is. I think people can be pushed to a point where they will they'll do something. They can be pushed to extremes.
Yeah. How about Darren Street? What sort of a character is he?
Darren's different than Joe. He's an anti-hero. He starts out as a younger criminal defense lawyer, but he winds up being framed for a murder and gets sent to a federal maximum security prison. And in the first book, he escapes from the prison and proves himself innocent. But then going forward, in talking to the editors at Thomas and Mercer, and this wasn't my decision, but it actually turned out to be fun. Walt White and Breaking Bad was really hot at the time, and the anti-hero, and Heisenberg or whatever his name was, and this alter ego that he had, and they thought it would be fun to take a lawyer like Darren, who's been through this terribly traumatic experience, and kind of turn him in that direction. And that's what I did. And in the second book, when I really turned him and he started killing people, readers didn't like it much. It's the lowest rated book I have. It's a 4.0. And they didn't like the idea of the protagonist being a killer. But I did it in such a way that he could justify in his mind, and a lot of people could justify why he did what he did. And there again, going back to the motivations for human behavior and what would drive somebody to kill. And so without giving too much of that away, I turned Darren into an anti-hero. It's a 3-book series now. I redeemed him in the 3rd book. And we haven't decided whether we're going to go forward with a fourth book, because I got into I signed a deal with Audible to write a new series, a three-book series for them. And that's fascinating because they're the fastest growing segment in the industry.
Will that just be an audio book, or will there also be a print book with it?
Yeah, it's a cool setup for me. It's 4 months of audio exclusively, but they promote it very heavily. It's called Audible Original, and I'll be their first legal mystery thriller guy or writer. And so they'll promote it. And I was already supposed to have it done, but unfortunately my wife got really sick back in January, and she wound up passing away in June. And so I got behind, you know.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
But anyway, they'll promote it for 4 months, and I'm sure they'll sell a bunch of them. And then after,
will you read it yourself?
Oh no, they actually are talking about Reese Witherspoon reading
really?
it, which would be fantastic. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd love that. Huh. They wanted a female protagonist, and they wanted me to set it in Nashville, speaking of Nashville. And I'm so familiar with Nashville. I said, yeah, I can do that, you know, without even having to go down there. But I've been down there a few times just to go to the court systems and meet some lawyers and some judges and things like that. But after 4 months, then I get the ebook and print rights. So
then you can do it in those formats.
Right, and I'll do it through KDP.
Yeah.
And
fantastic.
And yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to be really lucrative, and it's just another opportunity.
Yeah,
another opportunity to grow.
Now, how did the Darren Street series end up with Thomas and Mercer? Did you approach them? They saw how you were doing on KDP and approached you, or
that's what happened. They saw how good I was doing on KDP, and they an acquisitions editor named Kirsty Egerdahl sent me an email, and then I talked to him on the phone, and I was really conflicted because I had a bad experience with Penguin, and I didn't want to really go back to giving somebody else all that control over my material. I mean, the royalties, they pay 35% instead of 70%, you know, so I'm working for half the royalties, but I'm also thinking, okay, this is Thomas and Mercer. They're an Amazon company. They have all of this promotional potential. I mean, they could really blow me up if they want to. So at first I said no. I said, no, thank you. I appreciate it. And then a year later, I sent her a synopsis. I'd just been letting this Darren Street thing percolate in my mind for a year. And I wrote an outline. I sent her a synopsis, and they said, will you do 3? And I said, yeah, we'll give it a shot. So
what's your experience with Thomas and Mercer been so far compared to that earlier experience with Penguin?
Oh, night and day. They're fantastic. As far as just dealing with the people that I've dealt with, they're just great. You know, the marketing, I was a little disappointed, to be honest, in the beginning at the way they promoted things. I thought they'd be more aggressive about it, but they've looked at it more long-term, and like right now, today, they put my first title, it's called Justice Redeemed, of the Darren Street series, in what they call prime reading.
Oh, yeah. And
it's number 18 in the store, and I'm the number 14 ranked writer in the store. So I've stayed, you know, over the last few years, I've stayed in the top 100 and mostly in the top 50. I got up to as high as maybe number 4 But, when you're up there at number 14, you're moving a lot of books, and it has a halo effect too onto the Dillard series.
I see.
Because people read Darren Street, they like it, boom. Especially if they're series readers, they go over and they get a hold of Dillard, and they'll blow through that whole series. I really like readers that blow through the whole series.
Yeah. That's like printing money. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I noticed in the first Joe Dillard book, I was reading it on my Kindle, and I love the X-ray feature where you see kind of the bones of the book, and you can remind yourself who a character is. Yours was the first time I had seen, in addition to kind of times the character is mentioned, I think you call it an author's note, and it's a first-person note, like, this is one of my favorite characters, or this character. Are you one of the first people to do that kind of a KDP thing?
I was. That was one of their early betas, and which you're not supposed to talk about, but they told me I can talk about that. And Dylan, when they first came to us with it, Dylan and I were talking about it, and we just thought it would be a really cool experience for a reader to be able to go in and, click on a character. Maybe it's somebody that had appeared earlier, or just click on whatever, and just give them my perspective, the author's perspective, because you don't get that. You don't get that when you certainly can't get it in a paper book, but you rarely get it in a digital book. And so I took it seriously, and I took my time with it, and I think that I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from that. It was a good program. They kind of scaled back on it since then. We don't do it anymore. They haven't asked me to.
How long ago did they do that beta with you?
Let's see. I'm thinking we did that in 2014.
I see. And was it time consuming? You had to do something for each major character, or even some of the lesser characters.
Yeah, it did. It took some time. It took some time away from writing the next book, which is what, as a writer, what you're always doing. You're always working on the next project. But I think it was worth it.
Yeah.
I think it was worth it.
The other thing I noticed is that I can see under public highlights how many people have highlighted a passage, and you've got really impressive. There'll be a passage that 200 or 300 people have highlighted. Is that of assistance to you as an author? Do you ever kind of go back and find the parts of a book where your readers are essentially telling you, I love this part, and something that helps inform you as you're writing your current book?
I don't really use it as informative. I use it. I guess so. I mean, it does help me know what people like, and what kind of what really moves them enough to highlight something, because that's something that that they have to go out of their way to do that. They have to stop and highlight the thing, and it's like them sending me an email.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. And so, and it helped me with some characters. Okay, I'm keeping this character. They really like him, so this character is going to recur. Might be gone for one book, but he's going to come back.
Yeah.
And then some of the witticisms from Earlene Barlow and Leon Bates. Leon's not in the first book, but he's a sheriff that comes along in the second book, and it's turned into a really popular character. And people highlight a lot of things that Leon says, because I use him to, I've lived in Tennessee for, I've lived here for almost 50 years now, and except when I was gone in the military. And so I've heard a lot of country stuff, a lot of these old Appalachian sayings, and Leon uses a lot of those.
I see.
And people people get a big kick out of that, and they'll highlight them. One of them that just pops into my mind is the sun don't shine up the same dog's ass every day. If it did, it would warp his ribs.
There's a lot to unpack there.
It's just fun having a character that'll just come out and spit something like that out.
Right,
you know?
right. I could see how the reader would respond with some affection to that.
Yeah.
Well, what's the latest book out that is available, and how soon is your next book, and which series is it going to be?
The latest book out is Due Process. That's a Joe Dillard book, and it came out. Gosh, it's been. I think it was July of last year when we put that book out.
Mm-hmm.
But the next book will be out next month, and it's a collaboration. I've never done this before, and it's a standalone. It's a serial killer police procedural that I wrote with a guy that's been a detective for 25 years, and that was an unusual process, writing with someone, and I don't know that. I'm going to do it with one other guy, and I'll probably do it with Mark Stout is the detective. I'll probably do it with Mark maybe one more time, but I'm doing it more to help them get started than I am to make money.
Right.
You know, I'm trying to make them some money.
Yeah.
And Mark, you know, he's been at it for a long time, and he wants to retire in a couple of years. And then the other guy, he was a newspaper writer. His name's Kelly Hodge. He was a newspaper writer for 35 years in print, print newspapers. They just walked in one day. He'd been there for 35 years and said, okay, you're done.
Wow.
And so he wrote 3 books, and he put them up, and they're good books. But when you're new, I mean, there are, 6 million titles in the Kindle store now?
Yeah.
A couple of million authors, or a million authors. And it's hard to get attention. It's just hard to get any traction.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to use my brand and my platform to help these guys get started. And I'll do a couple of books with them. We'll split the royalties for a few years, and then after that, I'll let them have the royalties. And then after a couple of books, then hopefully they can go on their own and do well.
That's cool. Now, when you're doing books like that, do you have them up available for pre-order already, or when will the people be able to buy them?
We do real short. Our strategy on pre-order is different than a lot of people. We do real short pre-orders, like 2 days.
Oh.
What I do is I send out emails, and I'll start sending out emails to my email list. I have several thousand people on my email list, just people that have either signed up for it or who have written to me, and they're rabid. I mean, they're rabid fans. And so I send something out to them saying, okay, we're going to release this book, and then I'll send them a chapter or two, and then I'll send them another email saying, okay, you can pre-order it.
Oh.
Start today and save $1.
Yeah.
And then, but it's going to be out in 2 days. And what happens when you do it that way is that you sell all of these books in 1 day, 2 days, and the Amazon algorithm, it catches that, oh man, here's a product that's really moving, and it gives it more placement, and you sell more books that way rather than doing a long, drawn-out pre-order.
This sounds like one of the smart things that Dylan has understood of the Amazon algorithms.
It's all him.
That's fantastic. It's common sense. I mean, it's logical that you do that. You've had a chance to see the power of it.
Yeah, it is. Well, he's experimented. I've written 13 books, so he's had different. He's had time to experiment with different ways of doing it, but he's got it down now. He's got it down.
Fantastic. Anything else you'd like to mention that we haven't talked about that you think my listeners might want to know about?
I got started in a really unusual way. I got started by getting thrown in jail by a criminal court judge. I think they might just I got thrown in jail for contempt by this judge that I had been feuding with basically for 5 years, and I gave him an opening. Well, I didn't really give him an opening. He just thought he saw an opening, and he threw me in jail. And then he started filing complaints against me with the Board of Professional Responsibility, and they suspended me statewide without a hearing. And it really made me angry. And I went home and I told my wife, I took my son down to Nashville to a baseball camp, and I read The Lincoln Lawyer by Michael Connelly.
Yep.
And came back home, and I told my wife that I'm not going to practice law anymore. And she said, "Well, what do you mean? We have a mortgage, we have cars, all this stuff." And I said, the way they're treating me, they can go with this. I'm not going back. And she said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, I held up that book and showed it to her. I said, "I'm going to write books. I can write just as good as this guy."
Yeah.
And it's Michael Connelly, and I'm being all cocky. So, guy sold 300 million books, probably.
Yeah.
But she looked at me and she said, "Okay, yeah, if that's what you think you can do it." And I had no idea how difficult it would be. I mean, no idea. But I wound up running into a woman named Rennie Brown, who was formerly an editor for Simon & Schuster for a long time. And she had started her own company called the Editorial Department. And she helped me develop my first book, and over 18 months, and then we sold it. Or then we got Philip Spitzer in New York to rep it, and we sold it to Penguins. It took a while. We were poor for a long time, and we wound up filing bankruptcy and living in my mother-in-law's basement for a couple of years. But we got out of there, and we'll never see bankruptcy again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you owe that judge a debt of gratitude in a way.
I called him about 4 months ago, and he didn't answer, but I left him a message and thanked him for turning me into a millionaire. And said a few other choice things.
That's great. I have been speaking with Scott Pratt, the best-selling author of the Joe Dillard and Darren Street series. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thank you so much.
Do-do-do-do. I'll finish up the show now with a clip from the David Rubenstein show, Peer-to-Peer Conversations. It was taped September 13th, his interview with Jeff Bezos. Some things I've heard before, but there's some very fresh stuff and some funny stuff in these opening minutes. Hope you enjoy it.
Your stock is actually up 70% this year. Is there one thing that you think is responsible for that, or several things? Because 70% is pretty good.
No, I have been lecturing. We have all hands meetings at Amazon, and for 20 years, ever since we've been public, 21 years now, in 1997, at almost every all hands meeting, I say, look, when the stock is up 30% in a month, don't feel 30% smarter. Because when the stock is down 30% in a month, it's not going to feel so good to feel 30% dumber. And that's what happens. Never spend any time thinking about the daily stock price. I don't.
Okay. So as a result of going up 70% this year, you have become the wealthiest man in the world. Is that a title that you really wanted, or not? Is it?
I can assure you, I have never sought that title, and it was fine being the second wealthiest person in the world. That actually worked fine. It's not. It isn't a. I would say it's something people naturally are curious about. It's a kind of an interesting curiosity, but it's not the thing. I would much rather if they said like, inventor Jeff Bezos or entrepreneur Jeff Bezos or, father Jeff Bezos. Those kinds of things are much more meaningful to me. And it's an output measure. If you look at the financial success of Amazon and the stock, I own 16% of Amazon. Amazon's worth roughly $1 trillion. That means that what we have built over 20 years, we have built $840 billion of wealth for other people. And that's great. That's how it should be. I believe so powerfully in the ability of entrepreneurial capitalism and free markets to solve so many of the world's problems. Not all of them, but so many of them.
So you live in Washington State, in Seattle, or outside of Seattle. Now, the man who was the richest man for about 20 years is named Bill Gates.
Yeah.
And what is the likelihood that the two richest men in the world live not only in the same country, not only in the same state, not only in the same city, but in the same neighborhood? I mean, is there something in that neighborhood that we should know about? And are there any more houses for sale there?
After I saw Bill not too long ago, we were joking about the world's richest man thing, and I basically said I said you're welcome. And he immediately turned to me and said, thank you. But no, Medina is a great little, it's a suburb of Seattle, and, I don't think there's anything special in the water there. And,
right.
I did locate Amazon in Seattle because of Microsoft. I thought that big pool of technical talent would provide a good place to recruit talented people from, and that did turn out to be true. So it's not a complete coincidence. There's some correlation there.
You go into a store, when you want to buy something, do you have to put a credit card down? You just say, I'm Jeff Bezos, and they send you the stuff? How do you do that? And do you have to carry cash around, or you carry anything?
I do carry cash, and I have credit cards, yeah.
And if your credit card...
I have to show my driver's license, and,
But have you ever had a credit card denied? No, has that ever happened?
I have. I've had my credit card denied.
So what do you say when you say, don't you know who I am?
I give him another credit card. I say, here, try this one.
Okay. So you made an announcement that is the most significant philanthropic gift you've made in this type. It was a... About a year ago, you said you wanted to look for some good philanthropic ideas, and you got, I think, 47,000 of them, and you reviewed them. And how did you decide where to put this $2 billion? And would you describe exactly what you're going to do?
Well, that process was very helpful. So I solicited ideas, kind of crowdsourced, and I got literally, as you said, something like 47,000, maybe even a little more. Some of them came to my inbox. Most of them came on social media. And I read through thousands and thousands of them. My office kind of correlated them all and put them into buckets. And there were some themes that emerged. But the other thing that's fascinating about that kind of exercise is you see just how long-tailed it is. People are interested in trying to help the world in so many different ways. A lot of people are very interested in homelessness, including me. A lot of people are very interested in education of all kinds. I'm very interested in early education, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My mother has become, in running the Bezos Family Foundation, she has become an expert in early education. I'm a student of Montessori schools. I started at Montessori when I was 2 years old. And the teacher complained to my mother, the Montessori school teacher complained to my mother that I was too task-focused and that she couldn't get me to switch tasks, so she would have to just pick up my chair and move me. And by the way, I think that's, if you ask the people who work with me, that's still probably true today.
Did that teacher ever call you since and say that she was responsible for your success? Has she ever called you?
No, I'm in touch with several of my high school and elementary school teachers, though, but I don't know any of my Montessori school teachers.
Okay. So the gift that you're giving, essentially, you're going to have some for preschool for children who need preschool, free preschool.
Yeah, full tuition preschool, Montessori-inspired. I'm very excited about that because I'm going to operate that. That's going to be an operating nonprofit, and we're going to put them in low-income neighborhoods. We know for a fact that if a kid falls behind, it's really, really hard to catch up. And if you can give somebody a leg up when they're 2, 3, or 4 years old, by the time they get to kindergarten or first grade, they're much less likely to fall behind. It can still happen, but you've really improved their odds. The money spent there is going to pay gigantic dividends for decades.
The other part of your gift will be to give awards out to...
Yes, and that's going to be more traditional grant-making philanthropy. So there, I'm going to identify, with the help of a team, identify and fund, vet and fund family homeless shelters.
And that will be, you said you would give an initial $2 billion.
Yeah.
You expect to add to that?
Yeah, it's day one. Everything I've ever done has started small. Amazon started with a couple of people, and Blue Origin started with 5 people, and the budget at Blue Origin was very, very small. Now the budget at Blue Origin approaches $1 billion a year. And next year it'll be more than $1 billion. In Amazon, it literally was 10 people. Today it's 500,000 people. But it's hard to remember for you guys. But for me, it's like yesterday I was driving the packages to the post office myself, and hoping one day we could afford a forklift. And so for me, I've seen small things get big, and it's part of this day one mentality. I like treating things as if they're small. Amazon, even though it is a large company, I wanted to have the heart and spirit of a small one. And so anyway, the day one foundation is going to be like that. We'll wander a little bit too. So we have some very specific ideas of what we want to do, but I believe in the power of wandering. All of my best decisions in business and in life have been made with heart, intuition, guts, not analysis. When you can make a decision with analysis, you should do so. But it turns out in life that your most important decisions are always made with instinct, intuition, taste, heart. And that's what we'll do with this day one foundation too. Right. And the customer is going to be the child. This is so important, because the secret sauce of Amazon, where there are several principles at Amazon, but the number one thing that has made us successful by far is obsessive, compulsive focus on the customer, as opposed to obsession over the competitor. And I talk so often to other CEOs and some other CEOs, and also founders and entrepreneurs, and I can tell that even though they're talking about customers, they're really focusing on competitors. And it is a huge advantage to any company if you can stay focused on your customer instead of your competitor. So then you have to identify who is your customer. So at the Washington Post, for example, is the customer the people who buy advertisements from us? No. The customer is the reader. And in the school, who are the customers? Is it the parents? Is it the teachers? No. It is the child. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to be obsessively, compulsively focused on the child. We're going to be scientific when we can be. And we're going to use heart and intuition when we need to.
When you use your intuition to make decisions, where is the intuition leading you now on your second headquarters?
All right. Can we just take a moment to acknowledge that may be the best segue in the history of interviewing?
All right.
Seriously, David,
so,
that is
all right.
That's so amazing.
The answer is
the answer is very simple. We will announce a decision before the end of this year. So we've made tremendous progress. The team is working their butts off on it. And we will get there. No. Hey, be nice. Come on.
I'm finishing this up in a visitor's lounge at Mass General. Mom's had kind of a tough day today, first day after the surgery, and we're all weary. This is going to be a long slog. So again, prayer is welcome for Lois Edgerly, and this is Len Edgerly for the Kindle Chronicles at Massachusetts General Hospital. Thanks for listening.